Woohoo.
Hey, this is Karen Swanner from The Official's Mind. I'm here with Shane Butler, and we finally have the results of the survey that you guys took for us. We have some very interesting results, a lot of them parallel with some of the other organizations that I've actually surveyed. But one thing we found that, this group is really confident, which is great because you have to be really confident to be a referee, especially in soccer. That for the most part, we're motivated by our passion for the game. And that's how a lot of us got started refereeing because, we're very passionate about what we want to do. And we're all kind of stressed out about the same things. So one of the things I found during this research is that a lot of officials organizations, the officials are stressed out about the number one thing is making an incorrect call. And in this research survey, that was the number one stressor for everybody. So we'll talk through a little bit about what the most stressors are, where the highest ranked stressors are, what the least stressors are. And then Shane and I are going to talk to you a little bit about maybe how you can prevent from being stressed in those situations and what to do if you find yourself in that situation. So for stress, our top 4 stressors, number 1, making an incorrect call, way ahead of all the other stressors. Number 2, experiencing injury or pain. Number 3, making a controversial call, and maybe it's controversial because it was incorrect, and then being out of position. The least stressed areas were threats of verbal abuse and verbal abuse from spectators. So, Shane, let's talk about a little bit about maybe how we can prevent being stressed out and address those top 4 stressors.
Well, the stressors of getting a call wrong. I mean, you don't know if ultimately, unless you are 100% sure you blew a call, that, it was not a handball and you called a handball in the penalty area. Most often than not, you don't know till after the fact with, a coach sends a videotape in or you get confronted with it later. You just got to work through it. Whether you think you missed it or you got it right, you just got to, turn the page and move on, because it's, if you let that stressor, as we've talked about before, if you let that stressor affect you, you're going to miss 4 or 5 other calls. And I think a lot of stressors is like on a potential injury. I think that's probably the worst one for an official where, hey, a player got injured, whether it was a head injury or God forbid it was a leg injury that they don't come back. That's a big stressor for an official, whether, hey, did I miss a call that resulted in an injury? I think the injury one is more gets into the official's head, the official's mind, than a potential game-changing call. I mean, a game-changing call, of course, is a stressor, but I think, it's something we've not really thought of is an injury that because of a call or a non-call, even if you got, and I say that because I've seen it more recently in a youth setting where there was a missed red card in a state cup semifinal or final, what the case was, 2 minutes into the game, and the official was in decent position, but ultimately it was a straight leg red card right in front of the coach, which of course the coach sees it, and all of a sudden, coach goes crazy, and rightfully so, rightfully not at the time, because we have no video. I'm assessing the game actually for that. But I'm in a corner. I can't tell if she gets it right or wrong, the official. Ultimately I see the tape and it is a red card, but it's one of those that's a stressor on 3 or 4 different levels where the officials, the crew didn't step up to help for various reasons. There was a distraction at the 4th officials table. Maybe the AR saw it, but didn't want to step up because it's 2 minutes into the game. But, I think it affected the crew the rest of the game because that player never came back. Now again, they give a red card. Of course, the player still probably doesn't come back, but that stressor goes for 80 minutes of the game because, so I think along with the missing the call or missing a potential big call, which stresses an official, the injury, I think is more sometimes a big stressor on an official when they miss a call. So.
Yeah, no, I agree with you 100%. And I think that's probably why these things are number 1 and number 2, and you can help yourself with making a correct call or an incorrect call by knowing the rules. I mean, that's one of the biggest things. Like if you know the rules of your game, you can be in position, because that's the number 4 stressor. You can be in position by maybe doing some fitness or doing some training, and I think if you feel potentially like you made an incorrect call, then, maybe it becomes controversial. And maybe if somebody does get hurt or does get injured, that, that could become controversial. But, so how again, Shane, then, if it goes to the crew, right? So everybody in the crew is now feeling that stress. What is your suggestion to help de-stress that crew at that point?
Just you got to refocus. I mean, it's hard in soccer. It's easier. It's either I'm sure it's easier in basketball or football where there's more stoppages that the crew can get together. Hey, let's get over this. Let's move on and forget about it. Unfortunately, in soccer, that happened 2 minutes into the game. The crew doesn't have, unless they can quickly get together during the injury. But then they're just dissecting the injury or whatever the case happened. They're not necessarily rebooting to move on from the game. So unfortunately for if you have the ability of the headsets, hey guys, let's keep focused, keep going, let's forget about it. Let's get the rest of the game right. Whether we got it right or wrong, it's over with. We got to reboot and go. That, and in this case, the crew talked about the call at halftime, and they came up with whatever they came up, they didn't see it or whatever the case was. And truthfully, they did a good job for 85% of the game. It was just one of those, it's a flashpoint, again, those flashpoints can happen 5 minutes in, 15 minutes in, 40 minutes in. I mean, we both know this. So it's just one of those, you gotta have enough confidence. But again, that comes with experience. This is a younger referee and, first big assignment in a state youth playoff. And, it's one of those that how they adjust and get better from it is just, hey, you missed the call, you got to move on and just go. But again, for an experienced official, that hopefully you can, those channels are quicker, that you overcome that. I mean, we've said this, me and you, plenty of times where we've had the perception of missing a call and in a player injury or something. And again, it does. I mean, no matter what the level of the official is, it's going to weigh on for you for say, did I miss that call? And, or, hey, did it just happen? Because that's the nature of the sport where, hey, there is, I mean, and that's the other thing. There is in our game, a lot of incidental contact, whether it's knee to head. I mean, that's common. Knee to head, where a player, like on a goalie dives out for a ball, whether it was a foul or not a foul, there was still player clean contact or legitimate contact, not necessarily clean contact, but legitimate game contact that causes injuries. Mm-hmm. And again, whether, I had a situation recently where it's that diving playing by the goalie where I thought it was that, the everybody comes together play. Didn't think it was a necessarily an unfair challenge. It contact with the goalie, and the goalie hits her head on the player's knee, and 5 minutes later she's out of the game because she has a head injury. So but again, you don't know if that's because of the knee or she hits her ground or she has previous issues. I mean, but again, it weighs on you for another 10 minutes. Like, oh, the starting goalie's out. Again, it's a Division I game, and you start worrying about it. And again, it's hard. Even for experienced people like me, it takes a few minutes to get focused back that you don't want to miss another one. And then you have another potential head injury on a foul, and you're quicker to get it, and you call it. And again, it's an incidental play, but now all of a sudden you got two. It weighs on you during a game. So.
Absolutely. So one of the things that, and I preach a lot about, and one of my training things is the concept called thought stopping and parking. And you brought up a couple things that, how do you reset your brain, right? So that's really important. Like, and when do you deal with this? Because, you gave the analogy, if you think you made a bad call, whether maybe it was a good call, maybe it was a bad call, but if you doubt yourself and you lack that confidence and you think you made a bad call, then you're going to make another one and another one and another one. And pretty soon your game is shot. So, referees have to figure out how to deal with that. And the referees who know how to deal with that are the ones that can better survive that game. And so I have a couple of techniques as we go through this. And, just like any other things, it takes practice, right? To be a good referee, you have to practice, you have to train physically, you have to know the rules of the book, you have to get some game experience. Well, to be able to practice this concept that I'm talking about of, thought stopping, because you are taking those negative thoughts and you're making them positive. So you have to practice. How do you get a negative thought and turn it positive? And some people use techniques. Maybe it's a verbal cue. Maybe in your head, you're just saying, the word stop. Maybe you're saying veto, like you veto your call. Maybe it's imagery where you're imagining yourself making a good call or thinking back then to when you made a good call, or, you know, or something like as simple as taking a deep breath, right? And
Right.
resetting yourself. There's actually a really good video. It's an EPL, it's about the EPL league. It's called Behind the Whistle. And I believe it's put on by NBC. It's a YouTube video, but they talk about that. Like, what do they do? How do you address that? Well, you know, for any referee and that, you know, at a good level, you have to just stop it right there and then address it after the game. Because you can't fix it then. You can't fix it then and there. And you can't let it weigh on you. You just stop and then fix it after the game. And I think that, you know, that's something that when referees can learn that technique, and it becomes really helpful. But you have to practice that not only on the field, but in your everyday life. So when, you know, you're feeling anxiety, you have a negative thought, stop it and turn it positive. And it's something that I think will help with officiating as well. Do you have anything else to add to the stress part?
You know, we mentioned, you know, not only player injuries, but even referees with that picks up an injury. And I think that was part of it too. That, and again, a lot of it can, you know, it's training, it's being good, you know, eating right, hydrating, and all that stuff during the season. Which, you know, I think by now referees are well aware that they need to be doing this. I think a lot of injuries, I mean, sometimes they just happen by accident because they stepped in a hole or a player ran into them. And again, and I think what stresses, I mean, you mentioned it was a high stressor for a referee picking up an injury, because now they're not necessarily in a position to make a call, or can they do this game? They got a game tonight, but oh my God, they got a bigger assignment on Saturday. They're going to stress it. Oh, I don't want to miss that game on Saturday. That's a higher payday. And, you know, I got, you know, and I think now, you know, referees need to be more aware of getting stretching, you know, warming up, and it's going in waves over our careers. I think, you know, in the old days, nobody just got out of the car and you know, now players and coaches, they look around and are the referees warming up, and do they come out of the locker room 5 minutes? Are they taking it seriously? And again, it goes back to that, you know, things that coaches pick up on. Hey, if the referee crew ain't warming up, they're just coming out, you know, they're not prepared for this game. So it's just another mental thing that we've talked about before with, you know, what coaches see and don't see. So, and again, if they pick up an injury or they're not in position, it creates stress, you know, as well. So.
And, you know, it's funny that you brought up coaches, because that's a good lead in for the next segment, right? So the next segment that we did a survey about confidence. We, as an organization, we felt the least confident about our communication with coaches. So we felt that we were least confident in effectively communicating with coaches. You know, and that's one of the keys of our game. So, you know, let's address this a little bit, because that's one of the areas that we really felt the least confident in.
It's funny you say it, because before the game, I would say 60, I say over half our membership is very confident in talking to coaches.
Mm-hmm.
That, you know, how's it going? You know, how's your season going? And in the normal, you know, again, old school days where the coaches kind of controlled more of the assignments, you know, we're buddy with the coach to get on their good side. And a lot of our senior members are really still good with that, because it's a social aspect. But funny, when the game goes on, they stop communicating, whether they're afraid of upsetting the coach with what they say or stuff. And again, I was watching another webinar last night that a lot of times two coaches were talking. A lot of times, all you have to do as a referee sometimes, hey, I missed the call. I'm you know, or I you know, again, you can't do that 15 times a game, but one or two, and coaches will accept that. And sometimes that's simple communication. Or maybe a player is acting up, or a player did something. You know, I think referees aren't very wise of what the tools they have. Do a simple run by and talk to the coach. Hey, you know, number six is getting close to a card. Can you help me? Or, you know, again, it's referees need to acquire those skills. They're really good for the game, but during the game, like you said, they just don't know what to say. And then again, you know, you can communicate too much. You can go over there and you know, 4 or 5 times a game every time the coach yells. But I think a lot of times referees just need to put themselves in a position, like say it's a throw in near the benches or something. Take that extra 10-yard effort to get near there. You don't have to get buddy closer. Get in eye contact or you know, verbal contact. Hey, I got it. Or hey, you know, okay, coach yells out, number 6 is getting fouled 15 times a game and you're not dealing with it. What number? I 6. Okay. Well, thanks. I'll take a look at it. It's not that hard, but officials just need to sometimes go out of their way to help themselves with that. But
yeah, no, I agree. And one of the things that, I wrote down about being effective, how to effectively communicate. And that goes for not only as a soccer official, but as a human being. So, effective communication is really important. And the number one thing, though, is to be a good listener, right? That's one of the number one things to effectively communicate. Do you really hear what that coach is saying? He's maybe not calling you an idiot. He's maybe not saying that you're the worst referee ever. He might just want to really know like what his player did, right? So that's a say. And sometimes as referees, we don't necessarily listen to what the coaches are saying or listen to what the players or people are asking of us. So because we're not listening, we don't know how to respond. And sometimes that response gets us in trouble.
Yeah, and again, it's sometimes a reputation of the coach where, maybe you've had this coach for 10 or 15 years and they just yell. I mean, it's the boy who cried wolf syndrome. So, if the guy's yelling about 15 things that make no sense to you, you're not going to listen to him for that 1 or 2 things that maybe he has a point. Or maybe you carded this coach a few times in the last few games and you already got in the back of your head, I just don't want to deal with him because he's going to pop off about something that makes no sense, and I just don't want to deal with it. And again, it's hard to separate that, take it from each game to each game. It's again, recently with myself, again, coach who's been carded a couple times the last time I've had him, a player runs out of her way to jump in front of the ball, clear caution, ties my hands where the official has no choice but to give a caution for delay. The coach jumps up, screams, and again, it's in the middle. All I hear is yellow card and arms of flaring. And I'm sure to my mind, he's protesting the yellow card. And I get the flip reaction like, of course that's a yellow card. What do you want me to do? And then, no, I want to sub the card. Now, according to him, he's saying I want to sub the card, which now all of a sudden deflates it where it's not a personal draw thing with over the question of the call. Maybe he diffuses the situation instead of taking it to the next level, saying he wants to sub the card. Maybe he was really still arguing the call, but he wants to bring that down so I don't become the aggressor. It's knowing what to say. As you say, it's knowing how to communicate, but that's a person that's been notoriously quick with yelling, whereas opposed to another coach who doesn't say much and he asks a question, you're more likely. Again, it's all personalities and reputation too. But again, overall, I agree with your point that we need to be better listeners, not always addressing every situation that a coach brings up, but picking up the key points. Again, if the coach is yelling from minute 1 to minute 45, you're probably not going to address the guy the same way as a coach who makes 2 or 3 observations during the whole game.
Right. And I think that one thing as officials, we have to remember that we're here to manage that controversy. We're here to manage the game. And part of that management is the controversy. So we can't be the people who create that controversy. And, and I wrote a few things too that, as officials, we have to take responsibility for our communication as a coach, but we're not just communicating with our voices. Like we have to know the situations, but, are we on top of the play? Right. So do we give the coach an opportunity to say, hey, you missed that call. You're not even, 50 yards from play. That's on us. Right.
Yeah.
What's our body language say? Do we look arrogant? Do we look shaky? Do we look confident? How is our voice inflection when you're saying something back to the coach? Hey, I got it. Or, is your voice inflection? Are you raising, your tone or, and also, the words you choose, right? We just talked about that. The words you choose are so important. Hey, I understand, or I got it. Just, like you talked about, or, shut up and sit down. Like, what is a coach going to be offended to? What's going to wind him up a little bit more? Or do you have those words or those tools, that actually diffuses the situation rather than makes it worse?
Yeah, it's just, like you say, you got to know the tools you're using in the context. I've seen over the whole career, I've seen referees, complain about, or a coach would complain about not getting 10 yards, and the referee, no, it's 10 yards, blah, 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 and won't take the time to step off the 10 yards, but then the coach makes a crack, and the referee sprints at him for 40 yards to give him a yellow card. That who looks like the aggressor? And the coach made the simple reply, like, you sprinted over here to run 40 yards to give me a card, but you couldn't take the effort to get the players 10 yards back. I mean, it's all optics. And again, a lot of, with all sports, baseball is a good example with ejections where, they don't have a warning system where, you can listen and listen, but when you hear a hand up or, like we've been told sometimes over the years, put the hand up, hey, I've heard you, or I heard enough. You got to give visual cues that enough, coach, I've heard it. And again, sometimes that's voice, sometimes that's hand, again, because, players and players and fans and all that stuff pick up on, hey, who's the aggressor in this situation? If the coach is, screaming and yelling, you come over calmly and give positive body language, as we've said, like, hey, I heard you, calm down. And all of a sudden he's still acting like, or she's still acting like the lunatic, then it's easier for the official to go, hey, caution or ejection, I've heard enough, as opposed to, the old style baseball and coaches getting, yelling at each other, and who's the aggressor? They're both the aggressor. We don't ever want to be as you said, we want to be the calming influence. And it's hard sometimes because it's emotional. We're all emotional out there. We want to support our calls. We want to say that we don't miss a call. We all miss calls. But, it becomes a point where, does our authority erode by this behavior, or do we need to stamp our authority and go, no, I'm the one in charge. This is what's going to happen. So.
Right. And that's all part of communication. It's all part of the communication process. Again, even using your card is part of the communication process. And I love your analogy with, right, you didn't walk off the wall. You took your time. You're showing like, I don't care to do that, yet you're sprinting over to give me a card. So you're absolutely right. That's communicating something totally different to the coach,
Right.
and that's apparent. So, and I don't think referees necessarily as a group understand that there's many forms of communication. And so if you're concerned about, not being able to effectively communicate with the coaches, you need to take all those things into consideration.
Yeah. And again, it goes back to like what we said about the youth in our previous talk about the youth setting. So this was a youth setting where of course the referee's there for 3 or 4 games a day. Is it, I'm not there. Is it 10 yards? Was he 7? Was he 8? And does the coach have a point? I don't know. But, the referee, when they do so many games, it's a mental stressor. And, again, parents are yelling about stuff. Sure, the referee overreact by sprinting at the coach and giving a card. Yeah, that looks childish. But what are all the factors that led into that day? Was the coach being an idiot about 5 other calls? And the referee just finally said, that's enough, and again, it goes back to the boy who cried wolf stuff. It's if the coach had yelled about 15 other things that make 0 sense, of course, now the referee's not going to listen to him.
Right. And I think, and I'll give you an analogy, I had a coach that was just ridiculous, picky on every single thing. And this is the way I was communicating when we were on a football field. And he insisted that these girls were not back 10 yards. We're on a football field. It's clear that these people are right, that they're clearly 10 yards. So I walked up 10 yards of my little steps and I moved them up 2 yards. And you know what? The coach never said another word, right? But I'm communicating like I've had enough, right? It's obviously clear. It's just gamesmanship. All you want to do is talk to me. We're done with this situation. And, of course we had a laugh, we had a laugh and a drink about it after, but, but that's what it's all about, so anyway, but that's the communication side. So, the next thing we want to talk about a little bit is motivation, right? So, we found that the majority of the organization is motivated by their passion for the sport. This was a, I believe 25 question interview, and, the top 10 answers, the top 10 most motivating things were all based on, their passion for the sport, that they got the pleasure, they had passion, all those key words. But then, as we got down a little bit, we found that, some people were extrinsically motivated, which, the rewards and the accolades, and I think if, referees can start by being motivated by passion and have some of those, rewards and link that in, then I think that's good. But then, there was something that was a little disconcerting when I saw this, and that's why I wanted to put it up for discussion. And let's talk about this a little bit. So 79% of the people who actually participated in this survey were between the ages of 40 and 69. So it was people with experience, and maybe some people who were at the tail end of their career. But we had like 37% of the people that said, you know, that there was a lack of opportunity, and potentially they didn't really know why they were refereeing anymore. They didn't see the benefit in it. They started because they were passionate, but then they didn't see the benefit in refereeing. So, you know, like how does that, how can we deal with that? How can we deal with somebody? And, you know, sometimes people become demotivated because, you know, some of the issues with officiating right now, it's hard to recruit people because people are yelling at them, yelling at you all the time. You know, you step in because you love the sport and maybe you want to stay in it. Maybe you're a college player that, you know, isn't playing anymore. You know, my son's a perfect example and he wants to stay in it. So he's officiating. But, you know, then, you know, you get to a point where people are yelling at you, you know, you might be sick of doing, you know, a certain level game. You might not want to travel. You know, how do you keep that passion up? And, you know, as an organization, what do you guys do to, you know, help, and what can we do to help?
Well, it's good to know that the majority of people still have a lot of passion for the game. So,
Yes.
because if they didn't have that, then if they're just walking around or just collecting a check, then
Right.
that's not a great motivator. You know, I think, you know, a lot of that comes from the signing. So again, maybe they don't feel they get the right assignments from their respective assigners or opportunities. I think a lot of it comes if you know, we've been very um, last few years we've laid out here. This is how you do these. I mean, again, whether people pay attention to the emails or not. Um, this is how you get NCAA assignments. This is how you get potential playoff assignments. And again, it goes into a lot of those factors. Good officials will always get the top assignments, playoffs or whatever, if they continue doing the right things. Again, does people fall through the cracks? Of course. But I think a lot of the officials don't take their extra opportunities that's been laid out for them to get better games. I mean, look at the NCAA tournament. You know, again, it's open to anybody, whether you're a first year person or you just got to make that extra effort going to the website, paying the money, taking the test. And quite frankly, like locally, I think that pool of officials that were eligible, you know, we have 88 members. I think it was like less than 15. Now, again, does people still want to work in November when it's cold and, you know, and doing games at, you know, I don't know. Again, I think the information's out there. Sometimes I don't think the officials, sometimes as a whole, make that extra effort to attend or do those things. I mean, it's just like, uh, you know, a lot of the predominant assigners in the Midwest for Division One, they offer regional clinics. Now, again, doesn't necessarily guarantee you getting games, but if you look at the percentage of people of membership that goes to those, it's not those 40 to 61-year-olds as a whole. It's a lot of the younger ones because they want the opportunity. Again, the opportunity is there, but I don't know if a lot of officials take that advantage. So again, it's a little give and take. You know, sometimes it's because it's ability and you know, just the way the system works. And a lot of times the officials don't make that extra effort. And I think a lot of the people in their 40s, and again, hey, I've been doing this for so long, whether they think they're qualified to do it or not, they don't necessarily get the games. You know,
Right.
I
No, and I agree with you. I think that, you know, when looking at this, you know, the majority of our organization is passionate about the game.
right.
You know, potentially with this age group, that's why I mentioned it, you know, there are people and you know, me, myself, you know, I don't have any expectations about, you know, getting better games anymore. I've already had my career. You know, and so and some of this age group is in that category, but I think, you know, overall, I think one of the big things is that I think referees have to keep their goals realistic and within their reach. You know, what is realistic for them? What is achievable for them? You know, where are they working towards those goals, or is there a sense of entitlement? And I think that's one of the big things because, you know, again, you said there are opportunities to go to clinics. There are opportunities, you know, MMISOA has been putting on tons of clinics. There are opportunities for people to participate. You know, people complain about, you know, fitness testing, but you know, it's an integral part of the game, you know, so there's all those things. And I think there has been a lot of opportunities created for officials. I think they just need to take advantage of them. And, you know, yeah, I'd like to put some of those things on this website as well, because I see a lot of people, you know, coming to our page, right? Coming to this page on the website, you know, consistently. You know, I'd like to, you know, maybe like load some of those up. Here are your opportunities. Here are things you can take advantage of to help make yourself better and stay motivated.
And I think in that category that you've said, and let's be quite honest, the fitness, I mean, a lot of them don't take their fitness as seriously. Now, again, we know chapter wise, it's not, we're not looking to just fail people from doing games,
Right.
but the eyes, that walking around where there are signers or people promote, they don't lie. I mean, you can see who's not game fit at 52 compared to a 28-year-old. I mean, it's just realistic. And we also see the people there in their 50s that can still run like they're in their 30s, and God bless them. And those guys probably get the different opportunities, and it's also staying current with the rules. I would be venture to say that some of our members are not probably the most up to date on latest interpretations of offsides and whatnot, because they have the mentality that it was offsides 10 or 15 years ago. To me, it's still offsides. And a lot of times I think officials don't realize that their potential advancement, again, coach sends in a tape on an offsides call or non-offsides call, and maybe the official interpreted it wrong. More often than not, the assigners or the people are not going to go out of their way to explain this to the official that they got it right or wrong. They're just going to probably not use them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
And
no,
and the official never knows the difference, unfortunately.
Right. No, I agree with you. So, and again, it's a lot of it is that work ethic about keeping up to date, keeping yourself fit, keeping yourself knowledgeable, being able to, being willing to change with the times, and being willing to know where where you excel and where your limitations are. And I think
You're
that's
placed in the system, and you're placed in the
place in
system.
the system,
You
right?
gotta be a realistic. You gotta be, again, writing your goals down. My goals now is different than it was 10 years ago. It's
Correct.
yeah.
So if you had to say, again, I think, people remember why they got in the first place, right? And again, a lot of people do. And some of the things, and I think I might read a couple of them, but, because they feel a lot of personal satisfaction, mastering officiating techniques, like that was the number one motivational factor, or they feel excited being involved in something like officiating, or, to know more about the sport, or, perfecting their skills, or, discovering new officiating techniques, or, really improving. So a lot of the things they were most motivated about was really improving and learning and developing. And so that's kind of exciting, because that in a sense, that does tell you that, regardless, everybody in our chapter is really excited about, learning and improving and developing and being immersed in part of that. But, what kind of tips might you give an official to then stay motivated? Because, then that, you're motivated, you're excited, you start refereeing, and then you see, oh, wait, I can make this amount of money, or, I can do this as a career, and some do, or I can do this as, because I want to be, in the center of the stadium when the cameras are on me. How does somebody continue to stay motivated if things change?
You got to look at why you're in it, why you're in the sport to begin with, and ultimately what you want to accomplish. I mean, it's, and I've had 40, 50-year-old guys that, hey, they know they're not going to do D1 middles. They again, the ones that are really realistic about their careers. But hey, I can run a good D1 line. I can go down to St. Louis U and run lines down there and be a part of a good crowd. Or I'm good enough to do a D2 medal locally, because there's more spots, because a lot of the higher level officials are doing. I mean, you gotta, and maybe again, it's finding a mentor, finding someone you can, hey, or reaching out to me or you, or hey, what do you see in my realistic goals? And again, it's hard for people to tell them, hey, you're not going to be a D1 official. You're not going to, as hard as you work, the age and the cards and the way realities are stacked against you. But you got to look at it and give them realistic goals. And again, but officials got to be realistic in their goals too. If somebody's got a 9-to-5 job and they can't get out of work and they can only do games on Saturdays and Sundays, well, the chances of them getting 40 Division I assignments are slim to none.
Right.
They got to be realistic in their expectation. Or let's just say of those 10 weekends they get during the college season, 5 of them are due to family commitments.
Mm-hmm.
officials aren't going to go, I mean, assigners and stuff aren't going to go out of their way to look for 5 dates for XYZ individual who isn't established. I mean, they might do that for me or you or a couple other individuals that they'll work around due to the longevity that we've helped them out.
Correct.
But a newer guide and you know, that somebody always says no all the time, or an older guy that, you know, well, sooner or later you're going to get passed over. So you got to set, I mean, I'll give you another real good example. So we had again, this has been like 15 years ago, an official who was a really good referee was wanted to do Division One. So he had a year where he was working in the Missouri Valley, and, you know, everything's a 3-hour car trip from St. Louis.
Right.
And so, you know, for a 1 o'clock game, you're leaving at 8 o'clock, you're getting back maybe at 8 o'clock. I mean, it's 12 hours. I mean, I've always viewed it as a 12-hour day for those experiences.
Right.
You know, leave at 8, you probably get back at 8, and that's if you don't have dinner or whatever. And the guy, after about 5 or 6 of these trips, he's like, I didn't realize how much time it took to do all this. And he said, I'm really getting a lot of pressure at home, and you know, it's not worth it. So again, a lot of times I don't think the guys who have these lofty goals of Division One, sure, you can do St. Louis U or SIU or things that are close, but for the most part, if you're going to do this over the long haul, it is a lot of 12-hour days.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's a lot of 12-hour days, and it's not for everybody. And again, I think you got to realize, look at your situation and like, am I willing to spend 12-hour days, you know, all the time? And again, if you're lucky enough that you can get out of work at 2 o'clock and go do a 7 o'clock game on a Wednesday night or a Thursday night, 3 hours away, you're getting back in 2 or 3 in the morning.
Right. Right.
Oh, and for a lot of those people, go to work the next day.
Right. Right. And I think that's the reality of it. I think that's what's really important. You know, you really have to be realistic about where you're at, you know, and the demographic part of this survey showed that most people have full-time jobs. A good percentage of these people have families, so they have a lot of other responsibilities and commitments. So, you know, I think to stay motivated, you really, what's essential is having really understanding what your role is, what you want to get out of this, what your goals are, you know, what you want to achieve. And you know, again, and part of that is, you know, you can stress yourself out before you even get to a game because you're worried about your job the next day. You're worried about what your wife is thinking, or, you know, what your husband is thinking, or all those things. And you know, and I've had some of those conversations with people who have come to me and, you know, said, well, I don't know what to do about this. What do you think I should do about that? You know, and it's really you know, what is your reality? And it's different for all of us. You know, I was lucky enough, you know, when I was traveling all the time and, you know, 7 flights a week and all those things, you know, to be married to somebody who was okay taking care of the kids, you know, right. So I had that, so that was okay. But it, you know, a different situation, a different life situation may have changed my career.
For 98% of the people, I would say in our chapter, this is a hobby, and they got to look at it as a hobby. And the realist, I mean, if you lose your 9-to-5 job because you're ducking out at 2 o'clock and pissing your boss off to go do your hobby to make, you know, that happens 3 or 4 months a year, is it worth it? I mean, and we both know plenty of people who have lost their job over this hobby. You know, again, and then, yeah, I mean, you just got to be realistic. You got to be real, you know, there used to be for Major League Baseball umpires, when they went to the training camp, they used to do a survey. They said, how many people here are married? How many people are here have kids? Odds are you're either going to be divorced or you're going to have no relationship if you pursue this career. Mm-hmm. And you got to be able to accept those realities.
Right.
And again, a lot of it, you know, it's changed now, but when we came up, most of the FIFA list was divorced.
Right. Oh yeah, for sure. Most of them were divorced because you had to make that commitment. Like yeah. It was your heart and soul went into that. That's it. There was no time for anybody.
There was no nothing. There was no, and again, right? It's changed. It's changed to a degree now, but I mean, there's still that level. If to be at that level, there is a sincere level of commitment. And again, it's the same for, you know, take it down to the college level. If you're wanting to achieve these goals, there is a certain level of commitment, meetings, training, correct, and all this, and to expect those high end goals, you're going to be willing to sacrifice. You know, how much can you sacrifice?
Right. And, you know, and I'm going to ask you one last question as it relates to motivation, because, you know, from me personally, what kept me motivated for all these years, and, you know, and what keeps me motivated is I like that challenge. I like that, you know, that this is my motivation, being in a game that is very highly competitive, lots of controversy. that challenge of being able to manage it and coming out on the other side. Like that, for me, that's such a great feeling, and that keeps me motivated into actually refereeing. Again, I got to travel a lot and got to see a lot of things. Those were great. But really, that was always my motivation, because if you can do that, it's just that challenge. What do you think's been the greatest motivator for you in your success and longevity?
I just love being around the game. I love the whole, for years. I mean, being on the top, going to top universities throughout the country. And again, we all have an ego with it a little bit, but I mean, it's like being able to consistently perform at a good level in those contested great game situations, and feeling you did well across the country. And again, traveling, seeing different stadiums and working. And, again, a lot of it is, it's an ego pump, let's be honest. I mean, that when you do the top two teams in Kentucky and you live in St. Louis, and it's like, yeah, I mean, hey, you're this is a big rivalry, and you're here to be in charge of that rivalry today, and watch this game, and you have, there's no outside influences of, knowing, it's not like it's in St. Louis and you have the extra pressures of, are you benefiting the home team or the away team, and those are great moments. I mean, I've had thousands of those great moments where those, big, and again, that's still the motivation. I just really love being out there. I've noticed, again, I think I wish you'd have more data on it, but like, I see a lot of the younger guys get less motivated. They don't have those same drives of doing this over a long haul. And again, to me, it was like, I want to say I had a 20-year career of doing these games, or doing playoffs games for 20 plus years. I mean, to me, it's like, hey, not only have I been successful, but I've been successful for 20 years doing this. I think a lot of now it's a lot of the instant gratification of the younger generation where, hey, okay, I did 6 games at this level for 6 games a year for 4 years at this level. I'm done.
That's true. But right. I agree.
And I really look at them again, I get the money aspect. And again, it's and the game has changed as far as the scrutiny for us. And I don't think it will ever be as, for us, we didn't have all these 15 different camera angles on a call and getting, having to answer questions left and right. You did a good job, and coaches liked you, and you, everybody respected you. You kept coming. Now it's, hey, you missed this call in the 5th minute. You missed this call in the 11th minute. You're not going to go back there because there's a perception.
Right.
And it's harder, but I think that's the thing that frustrates me with a lot of younger officials, that they don't have the motivation to do this for 20 years. And again, I think me and you are odd birds, where that we've had a lot of success. We've had the luxury of, this was a lot of what we did. And, there's, not as many other restraints off the field, but I just don't see a lot of motivation from a lot of people to make this a 15-year deal. And to me, it's a little frustrating because, again, as our older members say, it's passion of being around the game, which we both have. And again, I think maybe and maybe this is a generational thing where it's a passion of being around the game, being involved in the game. Whereas now for the younger ones, it's, can I achieve instant success? Okay, I've done this. Let's find another adventure in my life.
Right. And I see that, right? I see that too. And it's funny, even the people who took the survey and found the validity in it, right? Like, not as many. I mean, we had a decent representation in that 30 to 40 group as well. But maybe, I think there was maybe 4 or 5 people in the 20 to 30 group that actually took the time to do the survey. But I think it's, again, it's really important that, we continue to do things like this, learn from the people who have been through this, that like what really drove us, our generation, to just continue to do this. And I think, again, people can get, lose their confidence, get more stressed because there's cameras on them all the time. They're constantly being scrutinized, where when we went through it, somebody might just say, hey, oh, that's great, good job. Or maybe you missed this.
We had one camera at midfield that didn't necessarily pick up everything.
Correct. And even being on the headsets, right? That's another thing that, your whole crew is absolutely listening to, the entire conversation. And, funny, I tell a funny story, but I find myself oftentimes just putting my hand over the microphone if I want to have a conversation with a coach or a player, and it's between me and that player, or me and that coach. I don't want the rest of the crew to, to be.
Or I take your thing out and put the thing over.
Put the thing over. Right. Exactly. So, well, yeah, if you have anything to add, great. If not, I want to let everybody know that, the results of the survey will be in the article right next to this video interview on this page. I'm going to be publishing, in a couple places. There'll be a ton of details. So, certainly feel free to read it. And if you have any questions, send us questions, and we're more than happy to answer any of your questions.
Sounds good.
All right. Well, thank you, Shane. I appreciate
Yep.
it.
Yep.
All righty.